The Good Guys by Anonymous. Summary. We are supposed to be the good guys, in which there are still a couple Spider-Men who believe in that, and Miles' escape from headquarters goes a little differently. It probably shouldn't have shocked Peter that there'd be more of them. A lot more. Scratch the whole Peter 3 thing. It's more like Peter 300. Although, interestingly enough, they're not all named Peter, like Miguel, the one in charge, the guy who popped up late one afternoon and nearly gave Peter a heart attack. Miguel isn't like the other Peters. There's something almost off about him, a roughness and coldness where there's usual humor and sarcasm. Peter isn't sure he's a fan. And the good news, though, is that Miguel brought him here to headquarters, where he's gotten to meet all kinds of spider people and animals. That one's still a little odd. Being with Peter 1 and Peter 2 had shown him how lonely he'd really gotten all those years. And now he's so far from alone, it's almost laughable. Here are hundreds, maybe thousands, because Miguel already admitted this wasn't everyone, of people who understood exactly what Peter had gone through. Except that's kind of the whole problem, isn't it? Miguel calls them canon events. Things that are meant to happen no matter what. Things that, if they don't happen, will rip the universe apart. Peter thinks that sounds like a load of bull. No one asks him for his opinion, though, and he's not quite stupid enough yet to voice it out loud. But seriously, it just doesn't add up to him. If Miguel believes that spider people teaming up will affect the multiverse, then why bring them all here to his world and have them team up? And if it really were true, if Spider-Man couldn't be teammates with Spider-Man, then why hadn't Peter's world been affected? Not him, Peter 1. We didn't disrupt a canon event, I guess. Peter 2 shrugs, taking a casual bite of his sandwich as he watches Peter 3 pace around. And if it had been, you're telling me you wouldn't have helped if you known it was a canon event? 2 sighs, setting his sandwich down and hopping off the counter. I don't know for sure. 3's arms cross, brow low over his brown eyes. I do. If I had known that girl needed to die, I still wouldn't have hesitated. There's a heavy silence as they both absorb that. Peter 3 can still feel the terror, the overwhelming shock of it bursting in his chest when he had seen MJ fall. He hadn't even thought, he just leapt. The look on her face as her hair, blonde brown whipped through the air, had been like something straight from his nightmares. No, canon event or not, there was no way he would have let her hit the ground. And look, Peter 3 points out, no horrible side effects. MJ didn't die and Peter's world is fine. 2 just sighs again, reaching out to clasp an understanding hand on 3's shoulder. He gets it. This is far from the first time it's come up. To be honest, 2 isn't a big believer in Miguel himself. He's grateful for these visits, grateful that he gets to see Peter 3, talk to other spiders, learn more about the multiverse than he'd ever thought possible. But Miguel himself is a bit of a sore spot. He won't let them see Peter 1. They really never should have mentioned that they'd traveled across universes before. There was an almost manic gleam in the man's eyes when he'd pulled up Peter 1's universe and forbid them from going there. Oh, Peter had thought about it more than once, but Miguel had an entire army at his disposal. Besides, Peter had friends. He had those, Avengers. He wouldn't be alone. That was also a bit of an outlier, apparently. Nearly everyone in the Spider Society was a solo act. I still say we just hop over while he's distracted. He's been obsessed with the new girl and that other kid for months. 3 speaks up. 2 winces internally at the words new girl. Yeah, that one had been rough. They should have known, really, that if there was more than one Peter in the multiverse, then that meant there was also more than one Gwen. There was certainly more than one MJ. But Peter 2's MJ was safe at home right now, waiting patiently for him to get back from his work trip, or so they called it. Peter 3's Gwen, well... 3 hadn't been able to call Jess's young protege anything but new girl since Miguel had first announced her arrival. He's not obsessed, 2 says. She's a kid. That makes him sound like a creep. He is a creep. Peter 2 wonders if it would be insensitive to point out the similarities between Peter and Miguel. I stopped pulling my punches. I got rageful. I got bitter. There was a capacity for darkness that laid inside all of them, he thinks. They're still sitting there, both of them pondering over things that no normal person should need to worry about when the alarms start to blare. All stations, drop what you're doing and stop Spider-Man. Peter shares a wild-eyed look at it with his friend. Miles Morales, he's entering Sector 4. The message ends, and all around them Peter can hear hundreds of feet start running. That's the other kid, 2 whispers, the one Miguel was so worried about. What the heck has he done? 3 yells. He runs to the door and throws it open just as a stampede of suited men run past. Jess! 3 shouts. The woman slams on the brakes for just a moment, tossing her head in the direction the spiders are disappearing. Come on, Miles is trying to stop his cannon event. Then she speeds off, her wheels leaving smoke curling in the hallway. Shit, both Peters swore. What do we do? 3 asks. He pulls his mask from his pocket, heart already racing and ready for the chase. We go after him, 2 shouts back, heading for the window to shortcut around the building instead of through it. And when we find him, 3 yells. They scurry outside together, the sunlight bouncing glaring beams across the glass as they run. Peter, what are we going to do if we catch him? It's the same question as earlier, just in different wording. Miles is running from an event that both of them know intimately the heartache of. They've seen what it's done to countless spider people. If they had a chance to change it, wouldn't they do anything they could to try? Let's just find him first, 2 says. They're lucky enough to spot the kid just as he leaps out the window, hitching a ride on a flying car as it passes. They're far from the only spiders hot on his tail. Miguel, Jess, and the Spider Girl Gwen are all right beside them. As Miles topples toward the city below, the Peters exchange a knowing look. In unison, they stop swinging, changing direction sharply and heading down. Just as Miles passes underneath, Peter managed to snag him in with a web, yanking him up just as the others fly past. Miles, 2 whisper shouts. The poor kid's heaving for breath, shaking his head and edging away. No, 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 let me go. It's crazy to run, 3 says. You aren't going to win. Miles bounces away, scrambling through steam and machinery. I would be crazy to stay, he argues. He whips around when he's found an open space, glaring at the unfamiliar Peters. He wants me to let my dad die. Is that who you all are? Miles scoffs, tossing his head and lowering his voice. He watches him out of the corner of his eye. And here I thought you were heroes. Hey, 3 protests. We're the good guys. He points between him and 2. Yeah, right. Look, kid, don't call me that, Miles shouts. 2 backs up, hands and eyebrows lifted. Okay, not a kid. Got it. The Spider-Man pauses, like he's not sure whether to believe him. Look, Miles, we've been where you are, okay? We get it. We really do. If you get it, then what are you doing here? My father is going to die if I don't stop Spot. How can you stand here and tell me to just let that happen? We're not. Peter 3 steps forward, pulling his mask off in a show of good faith. He meets Miles' eyes. We're not here to stop you, Miles. We're here to help. Miles raises a skeptical eyebrow. Really? He turns away, eyeing the space around them. No thanks. Look, Miles, I don't need your help. If you would just listen, completely uninterested. Thanks. Dude, come on. Really more of a solo act, honestly. Miles! Peter 3 finally shouts. The older spider leaps up onto the side of the pipe beside him so he can look the kid in the eyes. I had a Gwen too. That gets his attention. What? Peter sighs, closing his hands into tight fists for a second before letting the tension go. His shoulders drop. I had a Gwen too. Gwen Stacy. She was my everything. And when I lost her, I almost lost myself. Miles's eyes are wide. His mouth just barely parted. I'll never forgive myself for her death, ever. But I would have done anything to prevent it. Peter 2 lands silently beside them. We're not here to stop you, Miles, I promise. The kid swallows hard, gaze turned down toward his feet. He seems to be fighting with himself before he nods sharply. Okay, so do you have a plan? The plan almost works. I mean, Peter 2 and 3 essentially pulled said plan from thin air when Miles asked, so really this is pretty successful. Turns out the kid can turn invisible, nifty trick when people are trying to hunt you down. After slathering himself in as much grime as they could manage, Peter 2 had swung out of hiding and led the hundreds of other spider people away from the complex. Peter 3 and invisible Miles had carefully worked back towards the control room, intent on powering up the machine to get him home. I'd give you my watch, I really would, but nah, I get it. You gotta get home too. The place was empty when they arrived, their faint footsteps echoing through the hallways. Shit, Peter whispers. Margot. Spiderbite is the only person remaining, lounging at her usual spot near the controls. Stay hidden, I'll distract her. Peter turns back to the doorway and makes his footsteps extra loud. Hey, Margot, how are you doing this fine day? He cringes to himself almost immediately. Which one are you? Ouch, I'm a little hurt by that. I thought you liked me. The girl lifts a single eyebrow and Peter winces. You really don't remember me? Y'all Peters all look the same. So, you know I'm a Peter, and hey, we do not. Margot opens her mouth to respond when all of the screens suddenly flicker to life. Initializing go home machine. She leaps from her chair and immediately starts pressing buttons. No. Margot works frantically and Peter jumps up beside her, randomly shoving at things. What's going on? Can I help? He asks. Stop that! She shouts, slinging webbing at his arms. He rips it off, internally cheering Miles on. The machine activated on its own. That shouldn't be possible. Well, how about this? Peter tries. No. How about now? Ugh, you're getting in the way. On his arm, Peter's watch buzzes. Peter, Tu's voice comes in. He sounds out of breath. They're headed your way. I couldn't hold them off. A giant spider-like machine crawls down from the ceiling. Margot turns to stare at him. I have no idea what he's talking about. That could be any Peter, he blabs. The girl's purple-tinted eyes narrow. Suddenly, there's a crash of commotion at the door as Miguel comes slamming through it. No, Peter thinks desperately. The machine hasn't started yet. Retinal signature identified. He nearly sags with relief, but it's short-lived. Stop him now, Miguel yells. Man, what does it look like I'm trying to do? The man comes barreling through, ramming into what looks like empty space below the machine. Miles pops back into sight, gasping as Miguel slams him into the wall. Just let me go home, the kid yells. I can't, Miguel growls. You're a mistake. The original anomaly. Everywhere you go, you're an anomaly. I don't know what that means, Miles cries. Miguel! Peter whips his head around to see Gwen, young Gwen, Spider-Woman Gwen, come running in with others hot on her heels. He throws himself at the first one, trying to keep them from Miles. The machine starts sparking, disrupted by how Miles and Miguel keep entering and exiting the field in their fight. The spider that bit you, Miguel is saying, wasn't from your dimension. It was never supposed to bite you. Miguel, don't. If you hadn't been bit, your Peter Parker would have lived. Instead, he died saving you. If you would have stopped the collider before it ever went off, Spot wouldn't exist, and none of this would have happened. Miguel, go easy on him. Another Peter with a baby of all things strapped to his chest slid into view. He raises his arm against the blinding light, sparks being thrown at as Miles and Miguel scramble for purchase against the side of the machine. This isn't what we talked about. Something in Miles freezes at the words, the venom he'd been building twitching in the air. You talked about this? He gasped. You knew? The young Gwen's face twists with guilt. Her steps toward them falter. I didn't know how to tell you. That's why you never came to see me. Miles, it's for your own good, she pleads. Who decides that? I'm not a kid, Gwen. He twists in Miguel's hold, kicking out at the iron grip. The wall crunches beneath their weight as the kid's hands shoot out and clasp onto the older spider's arms. Everyone keeps telling me how my story is supposed to go. The electricity builds, the machine hums with power, golden lights bounces off every surface. Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. The pressure explodes. Miguel shoots back and slamming into the console. Miles stands tall, his hands sparking as the webbing closes around him. I'm going home, he declares. All the spiders watch as the kid pulls his mask down, his body rising until in a blinding flash of light, he's gone. Earth 120703. Peter 3 is almost expecting it this time. The portal is janky and wild, throwing out splashes of color and paper-torn edges. Funky, he thinks. The crowd that comes out of it is as mismatched as could be, but leading the helm is the serious blue eyes of one Gwen Stacy. Peter can't help but be drawn to them, even if she's nothing like his Gwen. You were the one who helped Miles escape earlier, she says plainly. It isn't a question, but Peter nods anyway. God, she's just a kid. Wasn't his Gwen? Back when this all first started? I don't know who you are, but Miles needs our help again. She pauses, gathering herself. I need your help, Spider-Man. We all do, the other Peter says. He still has that baby with him, oddly enough. We can stop the kids. We can stop Spider-Man's dad from dying. If you had the option, wouldn't you have wanted that same chance? Peter can't help the way his eyes go back to Gwen's face. Those eyes, so full of determination, intelligence, bravery. What wouldn't he have done to keep them alive? Yeah, he agrees, throat a bit thick. He swallows hard tears, his gaze away, and grins. And I think I know someone else who feels the same. End of story.